Well, hello and welcome to the inaugural 3Legs4Wheels lockdown F1 pub quiz. I can't even remember what I called it. Virtual pub quiz, that's the one. As you can see, I am here with Sean Kelly, virtual statman himself. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm fantastic because I've gone back in time. It's December and I'm on a yacht in Abu Dhabi. Woo!
I'm just in front of a painting of the official 3Legs4Wheels car. So can't complain of that. Thank you to Joshua Kaiser for the artwork if you're watching. Right, we put this together on the quick, as we always seem to do with things on this podcast. And basically, one of our regular listeners, Phil Cooper, very kindly sent us a load of Formula 1 questions in. We were thinking about doing them on the podcast, but virtual pub quizzes are a thing these days, seeing as we can't get out to real ones or get out to a real pub. So, hang on, where's it gone? Cheers. Let's go for one on here. I've got 20 questions, but Sean, I believe you've got a few more tough ones as well to throw in.
Well, I thought it would be fitting of such an occasion if I threw a few stinkers in there, you know, sort of for advanced anoraks of the world, of which I probably count among them. So, yes, there'd be a few more normal ones. And then if you think you're going along real well, you're going to try the bonus questions, the extra crispy questions, and see how you do with those.
Right. No time like the present. Shall we get kicked off with the first few questions? And tell you what, Sean, do you fancy throwing a few clues out for people? Maybe the odd fact and stat relating to each one that we do?
Yeah, this is my big opportunity to audition for Richard Osman's position on Pointless, so let's give it a go.
Does that make me Alexander Armstrong? Because I'm nowhere near that posh.
Yes.
Right. Okay. No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Question number one. After Renault left Formula 1 at the end of 1997, its engine was rebadged as a Mecachrome for use by the Williams team the following season. But what was it known as when it was powering the Benetton? And don't forget, answer in the YouTube comments.
Right. Let me get on YouTube real quick. I got to put the answer in. There we go. No. Yes, Benetton's engine in 1998. If you don't know, there is a clue on the grid in 2020. Think of what Red Bull have done with Toro Rosso. What have they done with it? They've changed it to their fashion brand. So think logically, Benetton, particular brand of fashion that they use to badge said engine.
Right. Question number two. With which team did Jean Alesi make his Formula 1 debut? And I'm sure you've got some facts about Jean Alesi for us, Sean.
I do. He was one of two drivers who was active in the 80s and active in the 2000s. And the other one was Johnny Herbert. Now, the funny thing is, you mentioned Alesi's Grand Prix debut. He ran second in his debut before eventually finishing fourth. It was the second time that year that a debutant finished fourth. The other one was Johnny Herbert, who ended up replacing Alesi in this team at the Belgian Grand Prix that year, while Alesi was off winning the Formula 3000 Birmingham Super Prix, at which I was attending.
Talk about linking things. Wow. Right. Question number three. How many Grand Prix did Damon Hill win? I'll give you a multiple choice on this. Is it 18? Is it 20? Or is it 22?
Not much I can add on that one. Just do you feel lucky? Phone a friend, 50-50.
Because phone a friend, don't go around to a friend's house at the minute.
Yeah, don't go around to a friend's house, obviously. Yeah, I guess you would have FaceTime a friend.
Yeah, FaceTime a friend, Zoom a friend, maybe.
In fact,
that's what we're doing here.
If you want really surefire, somebody to answer that question, maybe tweet Damon Hill.
Well, that would probably get you the answer. Depends what mood he was in. He could be trying to get back at people and not tell anyone.
No, he'll be fine. He'll still be doing his impersonation of George Harrison.
Fair point. Right, question number four. Who scored the most wins for the Williams team in the 1980s?
Well, now, a very successful era for Williams, of course, netting multiple drivers' championships and constructors' championships. I dare not mention any names, but certainly there were a lot of wins throughout the 1980s. In fact, the only time they went a season without a win in the 80s was in that 1988 season, the last season of the original turbo era, when Williams had to run a 3.5-litre Judd V8, which unfortunately was rather underpowered. And they also used a terrible version of active suspension, which they term reactive suspension, and they eventually converted it back to conventional suspension overnight during practice at the British Grand Prix that year because it was so bad.
Those days before the curfews kicked in.
Very much so.
Probably the reason why the curfews kicked in.
Yes, or converting a car from active suspension back to conventional suspension. Not really the work of a moment, but they sort of did a cut and shut, as they call it in Britain, and the car worked a lot better after that.
I'll tell you what, while we're on the subject of all things technical with F1 cars, question 5, what was the name of the aerodynamic stalling device pioneered by McLaren in 2010? Now, I can give a clue on this. It was something to do with the name of the sponsor.
That doesn't help as a clue for me, I must say. I don't know what that does for the viewers, but you'd have lost me at that point.
Ah, right. I'm shocked. Have I stumped you on something?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Blimey, right. Hang on, that's one for the diary. I'll make a note of that.
Excuse me while I jump in the hot tub here once they put some water in it.
I was going to say I wouldn't jump in it now, but then again, you're dressed to jump in an empty hot tub, so.
Got to maintain appearances. You see, it's still December. We're not under curfew yet. We don't have to wear masks or anything. It's brilliant. We're still like fans at the racetrack. Cars are still going around in the background.
As we can hear, although if you're on the yacht, what are you doing with the car still going round? Your time machine's probably not worked 100%.
No, we're on the yacht when the race happens here. Like, we watch practice qualifying, all thanks to the wonderful people at F1 Experiences, of course. And you will notice we also have the world champions for musical statues standing right behind me.
Shall we just move on to question 6?
Why don't we?
Okay. Aside from being world champions, what do the F1 careers of Fernando Alonso, Damon Hill, and Jenson Button all have in common?
Not immediately obvious, of course, because Damon Hill's last Grand Prix, Suzuka 99, the last race of the 1990s. Jenson Button's Grand Prix debut, Australia 2000, the first race of the 21st century. Now, of course, Button and Alonso ended up as teammates, but neither of them raced in the time of Damon Hill. So, what could it be?
We will find out. Question 7. Who currently holds 4th place on the list of most pole positions in F1 history?
Now, I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I'm willing to guess it's the guy who's behind the top 3.
Do you know what fourth place usually is, but with F1, sometimes you can't be sure.
Well, it's constantly changing, of course. Maybe not at the top so much, but certainly down the field. It's always, after every race, all-time statistics get updated. And sometimes you can trip over them. It's not necessarily who you might think it is.
Very true. Question number 9. For what did DFV stand for, as in the Cosworth DFV engine that powered countless Formula 1 cars to... You'll probably be able to tell us how many wins.
I believe it was 155.
I knew it.
Between the Dutch Grand Prix of 1967 and the Las Vegas Grand Prix of 82. You could also count Detroit 83 when Michele Alboreto won, but that was using a Cosworth DFY engine, which was a variant, a much redesigned variant of the original DFE. It was actually designed by Mario Ilian, who went on to greater fame after that as the founder of Ilmor Engineering.
But what did the letters in the engine mean? That is the question.
Oh.
Right, one more from me, and I'm going to take a bit of a break, and Sean is really going to challenge you. And the question 10, which manufacturer's cars included the models 312T, 156/85, and 643?
Could it be? It's obviously a constructor that gives no real rhyme or reason to continuity when it comes with model types. So it's obviously not somebody like, say, Williams, for whom it's, FW25, followed by FW26, followed by FW27. This is obviously a team that uses logic in, just as a passing concept.
Yeah, that's one way of describing them. Right, Sean, you've got some toughies for us.
I have, and in the tradition of live streaming, why don't I have a look at my phone to see what order the questions are in?
That would be a good idea.
If you could just talk amongst yourselves just for a second.
Yeah, keep talking on YouTube, keep answering the questions.
Exactly.
And,
it looks like we've rehearsed it.
I thought we had. Oh, hang on. No. Sorry. We were doing something completely different.
Oh, were we? Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah, what were the questions? Since I didn't put them down on my phone here. I told you, talk amongst yourselves. Go and get a drink. We're on a yacht. We've gone back in time. There is no curfew. Cars are on track and everything. We're not all struggling to pay the rent. We're not all impoverished and out of work anymore. It's great.
Some of us are on yachts. Some of us have got our own personal F1 cars behind us.
Yes, well, they're not my own personal F1 cars, of course. And if they were, they might be of the types that you just mentioned, 156/85, that sort of thing. Okay.
That was seamless.
Thank you very much. There's a reason why they get me in. They book me in to do this stuff, you see. As I have often mentioned to many people, I am the greatest Formula One entertainer in my price range. Now, are you ready for the super duper bonus round? Are points doubled in this round? I don't know.
I think we ought to make it double points because these questions are double difficult.
The who wants to be the whose lines it anyway point system, whereby if you get one right, you get 74 million, and if you get it wrong, you score -4.
That'll do.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so let's take a look here. We've got 5 real toughies here. Question number 1. What is the highest race number to have taken a victory in World Championship history?
Ooh. I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. Well, obviously, I would know where to begin. Not
well, you
one.
can start with, I guess you can start with, number 1.
Yeah.
And go from
there. I mean, with these days where anyone can choose their own race number, but
yes, these days, of course, you can choose a number between 2 and 99.
So it could be. I'm going to go 40. I'm going to say a personal answer 42 because that is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything.
42. Okay, it's a good stab at it.
We've been spending too much time indoors, so I've been rereading and rewatching too much.
Scanning my brain to think it has 42 off the top of my head. Would I be blowing the answer if I said that they had? Question 2, juxtaposed with question 1. What is the lowest race number to have never won a race in World Championship history?
Well, you said these were going to be tough. I didn't think these were going to be this tough, but then again, I should have come to expect that. Wow, that's...
It's fine. I think you'll find actually that one is a little bit more gettable than question 1, if you don't know the answer off the top of your head.
Right. Well, there's a couple. There's a few that I know definitely aren't. But aside from that, one is a pretty good call. You can usually
44's won a race.
It has.
Would you like a clue?
I wouldn't mind. I've
always wanted to get this name in. Moises Solana.
Yeah.
Let's carry on, shall we? Question 3.
Yeah, please.
Bridgestone made their Grand Prix debut in which race?
Now, there is an obvious answer to this one, and I don't think it's the obvious answer.
Why would you not think that?
Because, let's see, Bridgestone came in as into the F1 tyre war in 97? But I
couldn't possibly say.
But had they done something before that?
Well, I mean, I don't want to blow this whole thing for everybody because they're probably having fun with the whole thing right now. But
that's all I'm saying on it. I have a thought, but
yeah.
But just to throw a complete spanner in the works, sometimes it is the obvious answer.
It might be. I might be double crossing you. It might be just complete double bluff, and maybe it is the obvious answer. But yeah, Stew on that one.
Right, I'm going each way on this one. It's either the obvious answer or not the obvious answer. There we go.
I can confirm it is one of those two.
Right, I'm at least half right. That'll do. Moving on.
Yes, question number 4. Pirelli took over from Bridgestone as the sole tyre supplier in 2011 and actually won the very first World Championship Grand Prix in 1950. But they only won 3 Grand Prix between the end of 1957 and the start of 2011. Name all 3 of those races.
Yeah. I want to say to everyone that's playing along, good luck with that, because wow.
I will give some clues, some miscellaneous clues. The first one was Bernie Ecclestone's last race victory as a team owner in Formula One.
Right. So you've just got to know your history of the team that Bernie owned.
Indeed. The second one, it was the maiden Grand Prix victory for both the driver and the team, and it was on a racetrack that was hosting a Grand Prix for the first time in 16 years. No takers?
I'm looking at the comments, and the first thing I'm seeing is from our very own Chris from the podcast. Bloody hell, Sean.
And the last one, this is one of my favorite stats of all time. The last of the 3 Pirelli wins between 1957 and 2011 is notable in Grand Prix history because it is the only Grand Prix ever held where a driver led every single lap of the race except the last one.
That question in itself is a veritable stats fest.
Indeed so.
Wow.
So if you can work out which race that was, it will lead you to the answer. And the driver in question took his last Grand Prix victory as a consequence.
Right. That is one to get the grey matter ticking over. You got
And one last clue to tie the whole thing together. The driver who won that race also won one of the other 2 races in question.
Have you got one more for us, or do I have to start doing this work?
Well, let's have a look here to see what I wrote down. Oh my goodness, there's one more. Who could have guessed? With the Vietnam Grand Prix having been postponed, which is news to everybody around here because they're busy doing musical statues and thinking that 2020 is going to be great. Which country remains the only nation in World Championship history to have only held 1 Grand Prix?
Now, I just want to point out with this question, that footage of the Isle of Man Grand Prix that we tweeted out last week, that wasn't real. That was an animation. So it's not the Isle of Man. I do know that much.
Not the Isle of Man, which of course is not a sovereign nation according to the UN anyway. Just to make sure we're properly at pointless regulations. It is not the Isle of Man. But it is an area of the world infrequently visited by Grand Prix racing. And if you do need a clue, it's probably better known these days as a nation hosting Formula E races.
Well, that rules out my usual answer that I give to just about every applicable question on Pointless of Central African Republic.
Not the Central African Republic, although I could perhaps talk at length about the weirdness of Jean Bidel Bokassa, who declared himself the emperor of the Central African Empire in 1977, ruled for 2 years, and then he was overthrown by junta being led by the French government. But that would be just going really off topic.
Completely, and I think I'm about to be invaded by a cat at the same time. Right, shall we go back to the other questions, the ones that are slightly more gettable?
It's either that or talk about the Central African Republic a little bit more.
So, question 11 then.
Okay.
During his first 2 seasons at Williams, what race number did Damon Hill use?
What could it be?
And
if you know.
Would I be right in saying it's one that hasn't been used since?
You would be right in saying that, yes, although it had been used before. In fact, Jody Scheckter used it in his debut Grand Prix season at McLaren in 1973. So it wasn't completely out of commission before that. But certainly Damon Hill was the only driver to take Grand Prix victories with said digit.
So it's one of those numbers that isn't on the list of numbers never to have won a race.
Oh.
Question number 12. In their 11 seasons, God, was it that long, as an F1 constructor, how many podium finishes did the Force India team get? The Force India team, who of course started as Jordan, and then were Midland, then Spiker, then Force India, now Racing Point, soon to be Aston Martin.
Indeed. They're an interesting lot, Force India, because they went through 2008 being very uncompetitive. They went through much of 2009 without getting out of Q1 hardly at all. And then all of a sudden at Spa, Giancarlo Fisichella suddenly put them on pole position and nearly got them a race win, hit to it by Kimi Rikknen, who of course is a Spa specialist. But that was their first Grand Prix podium. And then latterly, of course, Sergio Perez was the guy who would regularly put them on the podium, to the chagrin of his teammate, Nico Hülkenberg, who may have to live with the infamy of having done his entire Grand Prix career, something like 180 odd races, without ever standing on the podium.
Almost as disappointing as Nick Heidfeld's career. A world of disappointment.
There was a certain Heidfeldian world of disappointment attached to that.
I was gonna try and get my backdrop to look like I was in Nick Heidfeld's world of disappointment, but I couldn't Photoshop that much fire onto it.
Well, it's a good job I didn't use it then, isn't it?
Can you Photoshop fire onto that? Well,
next week I'm going to be standing on the track in Beijing when Heidfeld tries to pass Prost for the win and then end up barrel rolling. Next week's World of Disappointment. Tune in, folks. You won't be disappointed.
Oh, God, does that mean we're doing this again? I better write some more questions. Question 13. Where and when was Kimi Räikkönen's last win?
Well, I can say it wasn't Belgium 09, because I just said that.
That is true. But
yes, it was not that one. But, excuse me while I pick my nose on camera. That was his last victory before he went into his sort of quasi-sabbatical, which resulted in him driving the perky jerky car at NASCAR events, which I think really was Räikkönen's sort of scene, hanging out in the Carolinas driving the perky jerky car.
I do remember watching his first race in the truck series and being very confused just by the concept of NASCAR pickup truck racing. And what the hell was the Iceman doing in that? Because surely NASCAR, usually held in southern states in America, it's warm. Is he going to melt? Sorry, I'm being heavily distracted by a cat that's attacking the computer here.
Cat attack?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Is that like when you play your Joker? Like we get double points for the next one?
Yeah, I think we're about to get 100% more cats than are on screen at the minute.
Right, okay. We're going to come up with cat-related questions in the next round.
Have I got any cat-related ones? No, but in the 1970s, whose race suit sported a badge saying "Sex, the breakfast of champions"?
Wow.
And a bonus point if you can name the team that this particular racer was driving for when he started wearing this badge.
Is that like a bonus point just for me or for everybody?
That's for everybody. That's for. Yeah, sure. Yeah. You'd be able to tell us what material the badge was made out of, and who actually did the original drawing.
I would say, folks, to give a clue, this is not one of the more difficult questions you're going to encounter in today's quiz.
That is true. I mean, if you've seen a certain film, you would probably be able to find that a lot easier.
Yes, I can confirm it's not Clay Regazzoni, for instance.
I tried to think what any badges on his race suit would have said.
Although I always love the story that Peter Winter would often say about Clay Regazzoni, whereby Regazzoni had a great tendency to jump the start back in the days when it would be an official with a national flag. And Regazzoni would say, "I'm not jumping the start, I am merely anticipating the start."
Right, question 15. At which circuit would you find the spoon curve? Or possibly curves, it may have more than one apex. And it's in the draw between the knife curve and the fork curve.
Yes, indeed.
This is what happens when I haven't got the other three people to tell me not to crack these jokes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if we'd thrown this together like at more than 10 minutes notice while we were just having sort of a brainstorming session, we probably could have come up with a skit based on household items becoming Grand Prix corners, couldn't we?
There might be another of these in the future. We'll have a think about that one.
Yeah, that spoon corner, by the way, it's very well known as being at a driver's corner, but there was a very big accident there in the support race for Formula Nippon, I think it was, in 2002, before the Grand Prix, when we had one car go out of the ballpark completely and land on the bank next to the camera position. And it got so close to the cameras, the TV camera stall, it actually dented the roof where the cameraman was standing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Bizarre question, but is there any footage of that? Was everybody okay, for starters?
Everybody was okay, and there is footage of it, and it is spectacular. If you look at certain, video websites, I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
Ah. Possibly the same video website that was streaming this one on.
I can't confirm or deny that.
Other video streaming websites are available, but don't go have a look at them yet. You're watching it on here. Right, question 16. What comes next? Hanger, stow, veil, and blank.
Spin.
If I'm on the PlayStation, then very probably.
Pit in, maybe?
Usually because I've absolutely ruined my tyres, yes.
Right.
I'm not the best sim racer in the world.
That would be the latter day answer to that question, of course. It wasn't always pit in right there. In fact, when they ran the first World Championship event, the pits and the start-finish line used to be between Abbey and Woodcote Court. It was only after 1952, I think, that they moved it to the exit of Woodcote Corner.
I never knew that. I should probably look that one up. Right, question 17. Regular podcast listeners might recognise the format of this. It's a who am I question. And as we all know, there is only one way to start a who am I question. I was born in 1974. I won in Monaco in 2004, and in the process, stopped Jenson Button winning the title. And Phil has put in brackets at the end, the bastard. So is this person going to be known as the bastard from here on?
Well, he was not referring to Jenson Button there, really.
I don't think he was referring to Jenson Button in those terms.
Right, I'm going to say it's a bit harsh.
He seems like a nice guy.
Right, yeah, he is. Yeah. Well, so is the person in question, of course, who has been unfairly maligned here, I'd say. But the race victory that you're referring to, of course, ended a run of 5 consecutive wins by, can I say the man's name? I think we know it's not him, Michael Schumacher.
Yes.
Which would have been, Schumacher was going for a 6th consecutive win to start the season, which would have been an all-time record. No one's won 6 consecutive races to start a Grand Prix season. Nigel Mansell had done it in 1992, and Schumacher was attempted to make it 6 in a row, only to be denied when he and I believe it was Juan Pablo Montoya collided in the tunnel. Behind the safety car, no less.
Easy to do, apparently. Or not.
You're not paying attention.
Definitely. Right, question number 18. Who was Mark Webber's manager when he entered F1?
Esoteric question even for me.
I'm trying to think to give a clue. It's a well-known character in paddock circles, shall we say?
In fact, when he arrived in Formula One at, I believe it was the 1989 French Grand Prix, maybe a race or two before that, he actually didn't really know anything about racing. I think he'd been running an unrelated business for the parent company out of New York. And suddenly it was a case of, right, you're running the team now. So he put his baseball cap on back to front and set to work.
Oh, those heady days of the 80s when you had 2 choices of how to wear a baseball cap. I remember it well.
And indeed the 90s in his case.
Yes, very true. It was starting to look a little dated by about the mid-90s.
Can I give one really weird clue, which if you get it on this one, if you don't know it and you get it on this one, you are amazing, everybody on YouTube. this person these days is part of a long hashtag for a nightclub in Monte Carlo. Now, if you know where the Portier is in Monte Carlo, which is the corner that leads into the tunnel, the right-hander, where Senna crashed in '88. If you go, there's a sort of dive nightclub down there. And the person that we're talking about frequents said nightclub to the point where they have a hashtag, such and such is in the house. And it has like an Andy Warhol style piece of artwork of him near the entrance, which I think is brilliant. Like that's what he does with his days. Like he just shows up at a nightclub, and that's his gig now. Good for him.
Do you get discounted entry into that club being a member of the Racing Club de Monaco, or the Auto Club de Monaco?
I haven't asked them yet. Probably should. Yeah, really not leveraging that thing as much as I should. Really, I'm sort of trying to get half price on the chip butties. Really. Maybe just get it on the menu in general.
That would that would be a good idea. Question number 19. Until 2009, who ran the driver management company 2MB? I'll give you a clue. You are looking for two people.
Yes, indeed. And I would say that by 2009, 2MB probably wasn't enough memory to run it, so they had to upgrade to 2GB, at least.
That's bad even by my standards.
You are welcome, YouTube. You are welcome. And other video sharing. Yes. These days it's 2TB, I'm sure.
No, apparently you can get an injection for that now.
Oh, really? Well, I've been busy drinking disinfectant all day. That's why my breath is so lovely and fresh.
Definitely moving swiftly on to the final question. Who scored more F1 career points, Johnny Herbert or Martin Brundle?
You see, tough one. Because Martin Brundle, of course, made his Grand Prix debut Brazil 1984. It's carried on until the Japanese Grand Prix of 1996. Johnny Herbert, aforementioned, made his debut start of 1989. Was one of the two drivers that I mentioned who was active in the 80s and in the 2000s. He ended his Grand Prix career in a big accident towards the end of the Malaysian Grand Prix in 2000. And they started almost identical number of races. Brundle started 158. From memory, I think Herbert started 161. But Herbert won 3 Grand Prix. Brundle never finished higher than second in a Grand Prix, which he initially did in 1984, only to have all of the results from that season annulled due to a technical hullabaloo, which may or may not have been a bit of a fit-up job. We don't know. It depends who you ask.
The jury's still out, but the statute of limitations isn't.
The jury's still out, but unfortunately the history books are not. So they did not count. So Brundle didn't actually get his first official podium until, I believe, the 1992 French Grand Prix.
That's giving you plenty to work on. Right. That is 20 questions. Once again, huge thanks to Phil Cooper for sending those in to us. Thank you, Sean, for your really tough questions. And shall we give some answers out?
Probably should.
Right. We'll go back to question 1. We'll do the first 10 of these, and then you can put us out of our misery with your toughies. So the first question. Right, I've got the answers in front of me. Sean, let's see if you can answer these without any help. You probably should be able to. So question 1. After Renault left Formula 1 at the end of 97, its engine was rebadged as Mecachrome for the Williams team. But what was it called in the Benetton? And it was?
Well, the Williams team called it Mecachrome because Mecachrome were the company that prepared the engine, a bit like Ford and Cosworth. But Benetton decided to badge it the name of their fashion company, which still exists today, and it was called Playlife.
I don't ever seen Playlife in relation to some rollerblades that were on sale. I think they may have been slightly knockoff. But
yeah, so in these days, it's like if you're a 90s kid, you get Playlife. If you're a millennial, you get AlphaTauri. Swings and roundabouts.
And it's still 250 quid for a scarf.
Sounds about right. Typical Formula 1 ripoff.
Question 2. With which team did John Alesi make his F1 debut? And it was, of course...
It was a team that had a really poor 1988 season and really hadn't been anywhere near the podium in a long time, and it was Tyrrell. And as I mentioned before, when I gave the question, Alesi was running second on his debut at Paul Ricard 89 behind Alain Prost, eventually finished fourth. Later that year, Herbert replaced him because Alesi was busy winning the F3000 title and won the race at Birmingham on the street track, then came back. And then, of course, at 1990, the first race of 1990 in the Tyrrell, newly resplendent with Pirelli tyres that they just put on the Friday morning of Phoenix because they tested all season, all winter with the Goodyears. Alesi qualified fourth, nearly ended up winning the race, finished on the podium in that race and on the podium in Monaco.
And whatever became of that team. Apparently they moved to somewhere in Northamptonshire and repainted the cars or something.
Yes, it's a little remembered fact, but that's the team that's evolved into Mercedes now.
Right, question number 3. How many Grand Prix victories did Damon Hill have?
You know what's funny? If you don't give me the multiple choice...
Oh, go on then. 18, 20 or 22?
No, I was going to say don't give me the multiple choice. Because it's actually more fun if I have to actually work it out manually. How many did he win? Come back to that one.
Okay. Right, question 4.
Wait, well, I guess we can't come back to that one because we've got people on YouTube who want to know what the answer is.
That is true, actually. So, was it 18, was it 20, or was it 22? And start thinking.
Can't just sack the thing off, can we? Well, he had all but one Grand Prix victory was at Williams. So he had 3 in 93, had 8 in 94, 4 in 95. I think he won 8 again in 96, however many that is, plus 1. It's either 21 or 22, whichever one it is. It's not 18.
It is 22.
22, there we go.
Right, who scored the most wins for Williams in the 1980s?
One of the easier questions, I would say. I mean, if you think of Williams in the 1980s, who's the first driver you think of in the car in the 1980s? It's that guy. But yet, for all the world championships they won, he did not win the world title with Williams in the 1980s. It was Nigel Mansell.
But the other question is, if you know this one, Sean, how many did he win?
I think he won... was it? Good question, that. I think it was 12?
It was 12.
Oh, yeah.
Right, question 5. The one where you gave me the funniest look I've seen come from you in a long time. What was the name of the aerodynamic stalling device pioneered by McLaren in 2010?
Now, there's an interesting side story to this, which was in 2010, I spent quite a lot of time working for Sky Deutschland, the German network. This was before Sky in the UK became involved in Formula One. So I spent a lot of time in their TV truck, and their co-commentator, Mark Surer, who himself is a former Grand Prix driver, would frequently mention this particular object in commentary. And I don't speak fluent German, but I would hear him mention F-Schacht. I would think, that's got that Germanic harshness to it, F-Schacht. He was referring, of course, about the F-duct.
He was. And do you know why it was called the F-duct?
Go on.
Because on the nose of the car, the inlet for it was on the F of Vodafone.
Ooh.
And that is the only reason why it got its name. There was no F shape or anything. It was just on the F.
Brilliant. Consider me enlightened. See, I don't know everything.
I knew something he didn't.
It wasn't a stat, admittedly. If it was a stat, I'd probably have a greater chance of getting it.
Okay, fair point. I will give you that. Right, question 6. Aside from being world champions, what do the careers of Alonso, Damon Hill, and Jenson Button all have in common? Now, there was one specific thing we were looking for here, but I'm sure you probably got others.
Yes, but we mentioned before, of course, that Damon Hill's career didn't overlap with either Button or Alonso's because he finished at the end of 99. Button made his debut in 2000, Alonso in 01. But they all took their maiden Grand Prix victory at the same race, which was the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Well done. Right, question 7. Who currently holds 4th place on the list of most pole positions? And you were right. It is the one between 3rd and 5th.
Told you. Next question.
But we may have to go a little bit more specific. There's people hanging on YouTube for this.
Yes, probably should. Well, I believe that it's Sebastian Vettel.
And you would believe correctly.
But I would be lying if I told you I can remember exactly how many. I cannot remember the exact number.
In which case, I won't ask you that question. If anyone can Google it and throw it on the comments, much appreciated.
Well, you don't have it written down?
I missed that one.
I was teeing you up. I was literally teeing you up like, okay, tell me what it is. I don't know. I don't remember what the number is.
Neither do I, and I've not got my notes in front of me. We'll just forget that ever happened. We'll do a retake later.
No, I think, well, let's just make up any number. Sebastian Vettel's 4th with, I don't know, 46.
Yeah, that'll do.
Why not?
And my laptop's on the verge of crashing. Hang on, let me just go back here. That's better. Right. As of the start... Oh, I didn't ask this one. I missed a question.
Oh, my God. It's a bonus round. It's the cat bonus that we're talking about.
It was when the cat started invading. Right,
okay,
I missed this.
Okay, to clear the boards. We've got a whole repechage question here. We can get back into it if we're behind.
Right.
Carry on.
I actually completely missed this question. And my laptop's on the verge of crashing. And I've now... That's better. Right. And I've now managed to switch the sound on the YouTube channel. I'm having one of those minutes. Right. As of the start...
Still in for you.
I'm back in the room. As of the start of 2020, how many drivers have won exactly 3 World Championships? And there is a bonus point for each one you can name.
Right. Now, to clarify, you're not saying drivers who won more than 3.
Nope, this is exactly 3.
Exactly 3.
No more, no less.
Right. Only 3.
So, triple world champions.
Right. Yes. Well, why don't we just talk amongst ourselves while our esteemed viewers try and name as many of them as they can. I should say, I can't see the YouTube comments. So there could be like 7 million comments saying, it's this guy, why hasn't he said this guy? I can't see that. So am I allowed to name them off the top of my head?
You certainly can have a go.
Okay, well, the first one would be Jack Brabham.
It would.
1959, 1960, and 1966.
Yep.
Then, it's actually Sir Jack Brabham, of course.
Yes, very true.
Followed by another racing knight, Sir Jackie Stewart. 1969, 1971, 1973. Which one of the things I think is interesting about British racing history was that until Lewis Hamilton did it, a British driver hadn't won back-to-back world championships, which struck me as scarcely believable. But there were so many different British drivers winning world titles that it didn't happen.
That is true.
Now, where else? Let's go forward a bit. Next one would be Niki Lauda, 1975, 1977, and then again 1974, which, if memory serves me right, that's the biggest gap between consecutive world titles, that 7-year gap. I don't recall another driver having a bigger gap. Graham Hill went 6 years between his 2 world titles, 62 and in 68. Then we have Nelson Piquet, who won for Brabham in 81 and in 83, the first Turbo World Championship in 83, then won his 3rd world title, hang on a minute while I choke, with Williams in 1987, despite the fact that we've already mentioned Nigel Mansell won 12 Grand Prix with Williams in the 80s, never won the world title. It would be remiss of us to discount Ayrton Senna, of course, who won in 88 and in 1990, and then back-to-back in 1990 and 1991. Have I missed anybody?
You have not. That is all 5.
There we are.
Amazing. Right. Last one of the first half. Which manufacturer's cars included the models 312T, 156/85, and 643?
Now, you see, I probably unfairly maligned this team for saying that they had a scatterbrained approach to their type numbers, because, of course, it always referred to the powertrain. For instance, the 312T was a 3-litre, 12-cylinder transverse powertrain. That's what it meant. 156/85 was a 1.5-litre 6-cylinder engine for 1985. A 643, I believe, was an internal. That's actually an internal designation used by this team to denote. Oh, okay, it's a 643rd derivative that we've produced. So that's, I believe, is where that sort of nomenclature comes from. But the answer is Ferrari, nonetheless.
It is Ferrari.
I would say there are some type numbers that really you go, why have you come up with that? My favorite one, 1996, the F310, 3 liters, 10 cylinders, made perfect sense. 1997, the F310B, 3 liters, 10 cylinders, chassis type B, made perfect sense. 1998, the F300, 3 liters and no cylinders. I mean, yeah. Carry on.
Well, I'm not going to carry on because we've hit question 10. So we now need to know the answers to your toughies.
I better have a look and see what they were. Because maybe I don't know the answers. Maybe I don't even know what the questions were. Oh, yes. Here we go. Yes, a little bit of Statman nonsense for your Saturday afternoon / evening. Is it Saturday? Is it? I don't know what day it is anymore.
I can definitely confirm it's Saturday. It's evening. It's evening where we are. It's evening.
It's nighttime where we are because we're partying the night away. So
is it where you? Is it where you are, or where you were, or where they were and you are?
These guys here, they haven't moved. They've just completely frozen. You see, that's a professionals at work. When you champion of musical statues, there's no moving it. What is the highest race number to have ever won a round of the World Championship?
No, I've been thinking on this, and
this is a difficult one, and it's not one that you're ever likely to realistically guess.
Yeah, I've known before the current numbering standards came in. I know sometimes going back into the 80s, there were cars going up into the late 30s, but was it higher than about 38?
A bit higher than that, bearing in mind that number 44 has won a lot of races lately.
Well, that is also true.
Yeah, and his teammate is car 77,
which has also won races. It's been a long week.
The answer is 101. Alberto Ascari won the 1952 German Grand Prix with car number 101, and every car in that race had a 3-number designation for reasons that I probably should have looked up in advance because I can't actually remember it off the top of my head, but it was a Formula 2 race at the Nürburgring. I seem to remember that had something to do with it, but I'm sure somebody on YouTube can correct me. Fill in the details, folks. Knock yourselves out. The second question I had was, what was the lowest race number to have never won a round of the World Championship? And this is actually a little bit easier than you probably thought. Think about a number, even before we had these career numbers, think about a number that wasn't used very much in Grand Prix racing. I mentioned my clue earlier was Moises Solana, who used this number in, I think it was the Mexican Grand Prix of 1963. It was not really reused in Formula One until Pastor Maldonado chose it as his career number, because 13 is something of a lucky number in Venezuela in sport. You've noticed a lot of Venezuelan baseball players play with number 13. So it's number 13.
Of course. I mean, when they used to have sequential numbers, you'd rarely, in fact, never see a 13 on the grid.
They would skip out on 13. That's right. I think, I'm scanning my memory here. I think Davina Galicia may have used it in qualifying at Brands Hatch in 76, but didn't qualify. But anyway.
Proved to be a bit
not going there because I can't validate that without actually checking it myself. So yeah, number 13. Oh, by the way, side note, the lowest number other than 13 to have never won a round of the World Championship is car 29. So Bridgestone made their Grand Prix debut in which race? Now, what was the obvious answer?
The obvious answer would have been Australia 1997, sorry.
1997, because of course that was Bridgestone's entry into the sport as a full-time supplier. Most prominently with the Stewart team and the Prost team, nearly won that year in Spain, got on the podium in Brazil as well, and of course Barrichello was on the podium in Monaco that year. Following year, of course, they wiped the floor early on with the McLarens and they ended up winning the World Championship, and then by 99 they were the sole tyre supplier. But they competed in 2 Grand Prix the 1976 and 1977 Japanese Grand Prix, because of course they were local entrants in those races. So those were Bridgestone's official Grand Prix debuts. You might not find that in their promotional literature, but statistically speaking, they were entrants in that race. I think they were only on one car in each instance. But there were those two races at Fuji are anomalies because of the local entrants, because it wasn't just them. Dunlop, for instance, entered those Grand Prix, even though Dunlop had pulled out of Grand Prix racing in the 1970, I think, into 1970. So yeah, there's some anomalies to be found in those races, not least because they gave the fastest lap to, I think it was Masahiro Hasimi, and then years later realized that they'd made a timing error and Jacques Lafitte should have the fastest lap. The official Formula One website, I believe, still to this day quotes Hasimi as having the fastest lap when it should have gone to Jacques Lafitte. So if you look at other websites, you'll see Lafitte has the fastest lap. I'm going off on a tangent now. Let's get on to the next question.
I was going to say it's the next one of yours. I do apologise for missing question 9 out on the answers, which I will do after Sean's finished his.
Righty ho. So I said Pirelli, sole tyre supplier, took over from Bridgestone at the start of 2011. Won the first World Championship Grand Prix in 1950. But between 1957 and 2011, they only won 3 Grand Prix. Name all 3 of those events. Want to have one last go?
Right. I'm thinking one of the wins that they had in the intervening time, the tyres were on a Benetton. Because
Go on.
I seem to recall Benetton having Pirelli tyres.
It is.
And oh god. And from there, I don't know, but I think it'll be something in 1993.
So anyways...
And further than that, I'm stuck. All yours.
Yes, so anyways, the first one in question, as I said, Bernie Ecclestone's last Grand Prix victory as a team owner for the Brabham team, and it was Nelson Piquet at Paul Ricard in 1985. Piquet's last win for Brabham, Brabham's last Grand Prix win, Bernie's last win as a team owner, and the last Grand Prix held on the full Paul Ricard circuit before it was kind of chopped in half post De Angelis accident for the 86 race, and now, of course, restored to its former glory, brackets, question mark, for the 2018 French Grand Prix and beyond. The second race in question for Pirelli was the first win for Gerhard Berger in Formula One and the first race victory for Benetton, as you mentioned. And it was a Grand Prix track that hadn't hosted F1 for 16 years. It was the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City, 1986. Berger won that race by running non-stop to take his first Grand Prix victory. And an interesting sort of full circle on that was that Berger left Benetton after that year to go to Ferrari. Didn't come back to Benetton until 1996, and then took Benetton's last Grand Prix victory and his last Grand Prix victory with Benetton 11 years after he'd taken his other victory for the team. Oh, wait, it's still me, isn't it?
It's still
There's one
you.
more.
It is still
It's
you.
still me. It's still with me. Yes, and then the last one I mentioned, this is the only Grand Prix in history where a driver led the entire race except the last lap. That race in question was Canada 1991, courtesy of Nigel Mansell, waving to the crowd and knocking off the ignition switch and all of that sort of nonsense, which led through the aforementioned Nelson Piquet for the aforementioned Benetton team to claim his last Grand Prix victory. So those are the 3 races run by Pirelli in that 44-year period of humdrumness.
I mean, admittedly, they now enter more races than they used to do back then, so there's a higher chance of them getting a win.
That is true, yes, but they came back as a tyre supplier in, I think it was 85 and 86, and then again 89 through 1991. Didn't have a great deal of success. It certainly had a good qualifying tyre at times, but were a little bit bereft of success in that period, save for those glory moments in three occasions against Goodyear's onslaught. If you compare it certainly with what Michelin were doing in the first part of the 1980s, certainly Pirelli were distinctly second rate, but nowadays, of course, it's a clear run. They're going to win every race. It is interesting when I try and prepare stats about Pirelli for the broadcasters. I have to say things like barring an act of God, Pirelli are going to win their 200th Grand Prix today. Unless there's a complete last-minute change of regulation, they'll have to run Avon tyres. Pirelli are going to win today.
Right, that was the last one of your toughies, wasn't it? So we're back to my list, I think. Question 9, which I missed out when I was doing before because I managed to completely confuse myself. What did the DFV stand for in the Cosworth DFV? And of course, it was the double four valve. It's very hard to say things at the same time when we've got a little bit of a lag. You know, with me being here and you being like 4.5 months ago.
Right, and yet we almost got it exactly right just then.
I don't know how we did that. Almost like we prepared.
That's how we synced up this gap in the space-time continuum by when we said the words double four valve. Worked a treat.
So if you want to go back in time, just say that with a friend.
Yeah, I've heard on reliable authority that 2020 is a really crap year, so I'm just going to stay here in 2019, boogie on down, maybe get a cocktail, get some birds in, the lot. It's going to be amazing.
Maybe a bit of a wine tasting session?
Might be a wine tasting session. There might even be a Starbucks session just to my immediate left. I'm not saying anything.
Other coffee is available. Well, actually, Starbucks coffee isn't available at the moment. Please reopen.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm a tea drinker. I don't deal with all that coffee stuff.
Right, back to the other questions. Question 11. During his first 2 seasons at Williams, which number did Damon Hill race with? And it's been used before this one, hasn't it?
It was, yes. I mentioned Jody Scheckter in 1973. I think he used it at the Canadian Grand Prix in 1973, but it wasn't used full-time in Formula One until Damon Hill used it at the start of 1993. Alain Prost selected number 2 for Williams as the reigning world champion team. They would normally have 1 and 2. And Alain Prost said, I don't want to be a 0. So the 0 went to Damon Hill. And that's how that happened.
And then, of course, the following season, after Prost had retired, Hill gets it again.
It again. He did.
Right, question 12. In their 11 seasons as an F1 constructor, how many podiums did Force India get? Sean, can you name them?
Can I name them? Well, I mentioned Belgium 09 for a start. And then what else did we have after that? We had, I think the next podium they would have had would have been... The next podium they would have had would have been Perez, wouldn't it? Bahrain 2014.
I think it might have been.
And then he had one in Monaco in 2016. This could take a while. Yeah, I don't want to bog this down because this is not the kind of number I'd know off the top of my head. I could probably work it out by a process of deduction. But it was something. It'd be the high single figures. I'm sure 8 or 9, something like that.
It's actually 6.
Oh, is it? Is that little?
Yes. And again, if I'd have been thinking on, I'd have had them all written down. But who prepares these days? Right.
I tell you what. I thought it was that number because I was thinking of I discounted Perez's podiums at Sauber before he went to Force India, which of course augments his career total. I think he has 8. Because we made a big deal. We made a big deal of that in television. That he was trying to beat Pedro Rodriguez's record for the most podiums for a driver from Mexico, in lieu of the fact that he hasn't actually won a Grand Prix. Mexican drivers still haven't won a Grand Prix since the Dutch Grand Prix of was it Dutch Grand Prix of 71? I think. No, I tell a lie. That was Rodriguez's last podium. Rodriguez's last win would have been Spa 1970, which was the last race on the old Spa, and is still to this day the fastest Grand Prix not held at Monza.
Oh, somebody's just pointed out we did miss one of your questions. What was the country with only 1 Grand Prix?
Ah, yes, of course. I guess if I looked at my phone, I would have realised I hadn't said that one. Yeah, how did everybody do on that question? Was that an easy one?
I can see on the comments that there is a right answer.
Yeah, and what was it?
I do believe it was Morocco.
And that would be the correct answer, which hosted a World Championship event once in 1958. The championship finale of 58, when the title could go to either Mike Hawthorne or Sterling Moss. And of course, it went to Hawthorne with 1 Grand Prix victory, which is a sort of It's been talked about in the last couple of weeks, of course, with the passing of Sir Sterling. But it was yet another opportunity for Moss to win the title that went begging. He was 4 times a runner-up without ever being champion.
And I was going to say, since then, has the title been won with only one race win during the course of a season? I do know the answer to this.
It's happened once since, and that was Keke Rosberg in 1982. And the interesting part about Rosberg's championship was that he had never won a race before 82. And then he won the unusually named Swiss Grand Prix at Dijon, his first Grand Prix victory and his only win of 1982. So he ended up being the world champion with 1 Grand Prix victory in his career. He won more after that, but up to that point, that was his only win.
It's one way of celebrating your first win, I guess. Just take the title at the same time.
Well, it wasn't at the same time.
Well, not at the same time. Take the title in the same season as that win.
Yeah. But it was unusual to have a world champion with 1 career victory.
And talking of victories, question 13 was, where and when was Kimi Räikkönen's last win?
Well, I was there, and I ran a stat in the broadcast that was oft used in the media the next day because it had been 113 events since Räikkönen's previous Grand Prix victory, which had been the 2013 Australian Grand Prix, the last official victory for a car named Lotus, under any ownership you want to call it. But he also won the 2018 US Grand Prix in Austin for Ferrari, which was his last win, 113 races after his previous win, beating the all-time record interval of 99 races previously held by Riccardo Patrese, who had gone between Kyalami 83 and Imola 1990.
And that is a dry streak to end all dry streaks. Question 14. In the 1970s, whose race suit bore a badge saying "Sex, the breakfast of champions," and what team was he racing for at the time? Don't all rush to answer this at once.
I'm going to say, how many people got this?
I might have to scroll back on the comments, but I'm guessing probably just about everybody that's been watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course it was.
It was Ricky von Opel, of course. Who would have guessed? Liechtenstein's only Grand Prix driver had that. No, it wasn't. Sorry, it wasn't him. James Hunt, of course.
And the car that he was in?
You're probably referring to a Hesketh.
I am referring to the Hesketh.
Of course, when Hesketh entered Grand Prix racing with James Hunt in 1973, they actually entered a privateer March and didn't have their own chassis to begin with.
And if you haven't seen Rush yet, why?
Yeah, my wife loves that film.
Anything to do with whoever's playing James Hunt, by any chance? You couldn't possibly comment.
All I said was, I want first go on him.
As I frequently say, moving swiftly on. I nearly called you Lee for a second. That I'm just, yeah.
I could be Lee.
Please don't.
I could be Brian if you want.
Question 15. At which circuit would you find the spoon curve?
I presume most of you got this, right?
I think quite a lot of people got this one.
Yes. It's where Sebastian Vettel makes all his best moves.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's good. Sorry, I've just seen a very disturbing comment come in. I will discuss that one later offline. You would find it at Suzuka. Question 16. What comes next? Hanger, Stowe, Vale, and it is...
Pit lane, I said it. Right? To the pits.
But if you're not pitting, then it would be...
It would be Club Corner.
It would.
Now extensively reprofiled, of course, from what it was up until the end of 1990. It was a very fast corner. I highly recommend you watch Nigel Mansell's pole lap from the 1990 British Grand Prix on a video sharing website near you and see how quick that is. And the reason I point that one out is because Rosberg's lap from Silverstone 85, when he lapped at 161 miles an hour, doesn't seem to be caught by the cameras. But you can see just how fast the old Silverstone was. Club these days, not much of a challenge by comparison. You know, swings and roundabouts.
It is. Right, question 17. I was born in 1974. I won in Monaco in 2004, and in the process stopped Jenson winning. I'm going to go for the bastard, meaning the answer to the question, not Jenson the bastard, which really does sound like a very low-ranking member of the Knights of the Round Table.
Well, it was Jarno Trulli,
It was.
who is among the ranks of the one Grand Prix win club.
I was going to say, was that his only victory?
Yes, it was. These days, of course, he runs a vineyard, I believe, where he makes a wine called Jarno the Bastard. Probably that might be true. Who knows?
I have had some of his wine. It is actually quite nice. He does a very good red. Although, as it's pub quiz night, I'm sticking to beer. Hang on. Oh, there. If I do that, I've got a pint. If I do that, I'm.
That's fantastic. How did you do that? It's like you're like all back.
I don't know. It's the amazing disappearing beer, which I'm good at making beer disappear anyway. Usually, I'm just getting technological help.
You just spill my pint.
Nope, I've vanished it. Question 18. Who was Mark Webber's manager when he entered Formula One?
I actually think this is a little bit more. This is a tougher question. It's not something you might know off the top of your head because it's not something that's readily apparent when you watch Grand Prix racing on television. And I mentioned the guy in question was drafted in by the parent company to run a Grand Prix team. That team was Benetton. He ran, I believe, Benetton's New York offices, and they said, right, get on it. You're going to be a Grand Prix team principal. That man was Flavio Briatore, who, of course, went on to great success. And he also, as I recall, headed up Supertech, which later on in his career inherited those Mecachrome and Playlife engines that we mentioned right at the top of the show and was flogging them off for however many millions. So these days, of course, he's to be seen in the nightclub at the Portier in Monaco. Hashtag Flavio Briatore is in the house. That's a real thing, folks.
As soon as anyone can get there, we want photos of this place.
As soon as we get out of curfew and all that stuff. I was supposed to be doing Monaco next month. Humble brag and all that. But I would have obviously gone in and said, "Hey, Flav, how's it going? You want to hear some stats?"
We'll try and get him on a future show from that nightclub with you on there when normality resumes, if it does again.
Wouldn't that be fantastic? Flavio Briatore really would be in the house. None of all this low budget stuff. Could be on his actual yacht. It'd be amazing. I've actually, you know what? Here's another humble brag. I've been on Flavio Briatore's yacht, his actual yacht, and I was nearly thrown off by one of his security guards.
I tried to ask what you were doing wrong.
It gets into a different story at that point, but I was on the yacht.
I think we need to save this one for a future podcast.
Yes, I think we do.
Question 19. Up until 2009, who ran the driver management company 2MB? A real pair of USB sticks in the mud.
Yes.
I'll just go and hide now after that.
Get me coast. Well, it is readily apparent the MB would be the initials of these two people with very similar names, isn't it?
I think, yeah. They didn't have to think too hard to come up with the name.
No, because that was Mark Blundell and Martin Brundle, who at two different times in Formula One were teammates, at Brabham in 1991 and at Ligier in 1993.
And causing commentators hell all the way through those seasons.
Yes, and leading to the popular segment D.I. Blundell on the Sniff Petrol website, I do believe.
I must have a look at that. I keep meaning to. Right, and the last one was question 20. Who scored more points in their F1 career? Johnny Herbert or Martin Brundle?
Now, I said that they've started nearly identical number of Grand Prix. Herbert 161, I think it is. Brundle 158. But Herbert had 3 Grand Prix victories. Brundle never won a Grand Prix. What's the answer?
Neither. They both scored 98.
Woo! Who could have foreseen that one?
Throw a trick question in at the end. Right. Normally in a pub quiz, it would be the swap your papers. So what I want everyone that's watching to do is mail your computers to somebody else who's taking part in this and get them to do the marking, or add up your scores and put them in the comments. Just while I say a few things, thank you very much to Phil Cooper for sending the questions in, and massive thanks to you, Sean, for helping us out with this, and I really hope you're enjoying that, or have enjoyed, or are enjoying the party that you were at 4 months ago.
Yes, I just want to say other coffee is available.
Want to thank everybody for watching this, and everyone that's sticking with us on the podcasts all the way through the lockdown. And if you've enjoyed it, let us know. Drop us a tweet at 3Legs4Wheels. I'm at Pablo100. Sean is at Virtual Statman.
Also, if you've hated it, drop us a line and tell us that too.
If you hated it, then we're at Sniff Petrol. Just look for the DI Brundle page. The link will be on there. We will be doing another podcast as always on Monday night. Sean, do you have anything planned for anything imminently? Maybe staying in for a drink somewhere?
Well, we're having some wine later.
Quiet.
Can you still hear me? I'm still here.
You've really gone quiet.
I'm still here. Hello.
You've muted yourself.
I have not muted myself. I swear I have not.
Oh, this is going great. Professional as always. Sean, your microphone appears to have run out of batteries, and
it's there. It's working. It's definitely on. I can see it.
If anyone can lip read, there's probably a lawsuit in there. Right, we'll be back with the podcast next week. Thank you for joining us, and you never know, we may do this again. We will see you soon.